Have you ever stepped into a room or on a stage and feel like everyone is looking at you like you don't belong there? And you feel like as if maybe you're naked. Okay. Madam Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters, dear guests, have you ever felt sometimes you don't belong or you just don't quite fit in? What does it mean to belong, to truly belong? My whole life, I have longed to belong. I remember my first day of school. I grew up on the west coast of Canada in a small farming community. And up until that point, my first day of school, I didn't really realize the official language in Canada is actually not Cantonese, but English. And even more to my surprise, I realized the other kids didn't really look like me. And I also didn't really look like them. I remember going to school, clutching on to my lunchbox. I thought to myself, all I really wanted was just a peanut butter jelly sandwich like all the other kids. But instead, I got Chinese food. I was so embarrassed that if someone would see it. I remember other kids who looked at me in my lunchbox and said, "Oh, what are you eating? It smells so weird. You're so weird." I remember playing on the playground with other kids, running and playing tag. And I tagged this one girl one day and I said, "You're it." And she turned around and looked at me and said, "No, you're still it." But I just tagged you. You're it. That's how this game works. If you want to play with us, you're always going to be it. I never forgot that day. I wanted to be Canadian so badly. I wanted to belong. I longed to belong. I thought to myself, if only I was a pretty blonde, then I would finally belong. Fast forward several years later, I go to business school against my own personal desires, but I wanted to make my family proud. And there, I also felt I didn't really belong. It wasn't for me. So I left. I kept trying to find myself, trying to belong. So what did I do? I joined a bunch of gypsies, traveling hippies, roaming freely around the world with dreadlocks and hugging trees. And I just felt so free. But there, it wasn't really for me. I also didn't feel like I belonged. So we fast forward to many years later and I go to grad school. I meet the love of my life. Finally, I belong to someone and someone belongs to me. Of course, we live happily ever after, and that's where the speech ends. I'm kidding. We don't live happily ever after, and that's, of course, not where the speech ends. Relationships are hard work. We moved from the west coast to the east coast of Canada to a new city for his work, and I didn't know a single person. I had no job, no income, no family, no friends. And there I was. I found myself alone again, longing to belong. I was screwing through social media, scrolling and scrolling. Have you ever noticed on Instagram, everyone's lives just look so perfect, so perfect, like they belong there. They belong in that post. Everything is so perfect. Everyone belongs. Everyone except me. Where do I belong? I was walking down the street one day and I walked in this bookstore and I faced this book and I looked at the title, The Gifts of Imperfection. Let go of who you are, who you think you are, and embrace who you are. I thought to myself, but that's easier said than done. It said to accept yourself. Again, that's easier said than done. But as I began reading the book, I also realized I've spent my whole life longing to belong to somebody else. Like the game of tag, chasing, running, and trying to hope for that validation, trying so hard to belong. But I never took the time to belong to myself. Because you see, unless we belong to ourselves first, we cannot belong to anyone else. So today, while I may not be a pretty blonde, I am indeed a very pretty Chinese Canadian with long black hair, but I'll let the judges decide. So today, I long to belong to myself. What about you, fellow Toastmasters, guests, and contest chair? When was the last time you longed to belong to yourself? Back to you, contest chair.